Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. This is Jessica, and today we are going to be going through all of the books that I read in December. December was a weird month. I chose to participate in Vlogmas, which I really enjoyed, or Bookmas or whatever. I did 13 total videos in a row, which was crazy, but I learned so many things and I am so glad that I did it. But I didn't have quite as much time for reading as I usually do because of that and because of December, because of Christmas parties and holidays and family time and all the things that go along with December. But I'm ready to give you my best and worst books, to tell you the highs and the lows, to tell you what I liked, what I didn't like from December. So let's go ahead and get started with the first book I read in December, which is going to be Lovelight Farms by B.K. Borison. Lovelight Farms is the story of Christmas tree farm owner Stella, who has been having a little bit of difficulty with the Christmas tree farm since she bought it recently. The barn has been invaded by raccoons, they've got missing shipments, they're generally in some financial trouble, and she hits upon this idea to enter an Instagram contest with a big prize to have her Christmas tree farm be profiled on an influencer's page. To her surprise, she winds up being a finalist for this, and that's amazing news, except for one thing. The problem is that she told them that she had a boyfriend, and she does not have a boyfriend. So she has to come up with a fake boyfriend. Yes, friends, we are in for some fake dating in this story. So she asks her best friend, Luca, if he will pose as her boyfriend while the influencer is in town and, hijinks ensue. You will not be surprised to know that they might fall in love. It's that kind of story. This book sounded so over the top, heartwarming and cozy to me that I was pretty sure going into it that I was not going to like it. And I have to tell you that I absolutely loved it. It gave me real Gilmore Girls vibes, which I know people say, but it did. Real Gilmore Girls vibes. It was sweet. It was cozy. I loved all the characters, and I actually plan to read the rest of the series. I think there are 4 books total, so that I can get the love story of all the other characters that I met in this story. Stella and Luca are very cute together. They don't have any red flags. There's no toxic things in this story. If you can't tell, I have some issues with romance sometimes, but this one absolutely worked for me. And I don't think, it's not exactly Christmas themed, more like winter, although there are Christmas trees. But again, it's not set at Christmas time. It's just more set in the late fall, early winter. So if that appeals to you, I would definitely recommend it. And I am planning to check out the rest of the series at some point in the future. The next book that I read in December is actually a DNF. It's a tough one for me because it is the second book in a series. It is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent. I read the first book in this series earlier in the year, and I thought that it did a lot of things right that sometimes I don't feel like romantasy does right. I felt like maybe the world wasn't amazingly built, but it made at least a fair amount of sense to me. The relationship didn't feel super toxic. I was interested in the plot line, and I hated the ending. So I was very not sure if I was going to read this book because I hated the ending of the first book so much. I'm not going to spoil the ending of the first book for you. Let me just tell you that this is a world where vampires are the rulers of the kingdom of these various lands, and humans are very much subjugated to them. Our main character, she is a vampire, and no, she's not a vampire. She's a human. Our main character is a human who enters into this trial where she is competing against all these other vampires for reasons, and she falls in love with one of the other vampires, and that's the plot line of the first book. Basically, there's a lot more stuff than that, but I don't want to spoil anything. As I said, I hated the ending of that first book, but I was hoping the second book was going to be able to redeem it, and it absolutely 100% did not. It doubled down on the thing that all vampire books seem to do, which is politics. Like, I don't know. What is it? What is it about a vampire book that makes writers feel like we really are going to care about a lot of court vampire politics? Because man, I really don't. And I also thought that the relationship, I couldn't get back there after the ending of the first book, and it was very slow. And this book is like 700 pages long, and I read 25% of it, which was plenty. That was enough for me, and I DNF'd it, and I am not sorry, and I don't know if I'm going to be reading anything else by the author because I just was so turned off by this book. Let me know in the comments if you had a similar reaction to the second book in this series, because I feel like I can't be the only one who just did not like it. The next book I read was Small Things Like These by Keegan. This was not on my December TBR. It was actually just a book that I had seen a lot of people reading, and I wanted to read some holiday things, and so I decided on this one. This is the story of a small town in Ireland in the 1980s. It's a story of a man's conflict with himself, with his town, with his community, as he tries to do the right thing, as he runs afoul of some of the, I would say the authorities in the area, or the groups that have influenced specifically the church. I am always going to be someone who loves reading about people who are fighting against structures that are doing the wrong thing, the person who is trying to do what is right, no matter what the consequences are, even in this book, in a small way. I'm not going to tell you what the plot is. It is a novella. It's like 130 pages long. You could read it in an hour and a half. And I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to give you any more than that. But I'm going to tell you that if you like a literary fiction story that really grapples in kind of a small way with issues of morality and what's right and what makes you a good person, I think that you would absolutely love this book. It is a Christmas story. It is set largely on Christmas Eve, but I think you could read it at any time of the year that you want to. And I am going to give it my highest recommendations, and I did give it 5 stars. After that, I once again deviated from my written TBR, and I read How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. This was a 2024 release. I think it was 2024. Let me see, wait. Yes, it came out in March, and it is a cozy mystery story set in an English village. Our main character is Annie, who has come to Castle Knoll in this small English village to try to figure out what is going on with her Aunt Frances. Frances has long been afraid that she will be murdered after getting a fortune at a fair very young in her life when she was 16 years old. And so she spent her whole life obsessed with how she might be murdered. And lo and behold, the title, yes, it does come to pass. And it is up to Annie to figure out what has happened to her aunt. I'm not going to spoil a lot of the plot line of this. I will say that if you like a cozy but still serious English mystery, something I would say if you liked Thursday Murder Club, you would probably really, really enjoy this. It was cozy, but it still had some bite to it. You do it's kind of a dual timeline situation where we are following Annie and we're also following Frances through her diary entries and things like that earlier in her life as we find out what happened to her and we try to track down what it is who is the person who murdered her. And I just thought it was really great. I have been missing reading a lot of mysteries this year. I didn't read a ton, and this one really made me feel like I want to get back into the genre. So I am back in. It's one of my goals for the year to read some more mysteries. This book does have a sequel coming out in, I'm going to say April. I think it's April. I have an arc of that, so I am planning to read that and review it for the channel. So look forward for that. Look forward to that. I can't talk today. I don't know what's going on. The next book that I read was James by Percival Everett. This was a 5-star read for me easily. I've already talked about it a lot. If you want to look at my top books of the year video, you'll find quite an extensive discussion of James. I'm not going to get into it too much here, but it is the story of Huckleberry Finn told from the perspective of the runaway slave, James, and it was really fantastic. It deviates from the story at some points, the original story. It is very similar, but there are all these periods in the original story where we're just following Huck and we don't know what's going on with Jim. And this really places him center in the story, and it had a lot to say. There's a lot of commentary on life then and life now, and everyone's reading it. It's won all the awards. If you haven't heard about James, I don't know where you've been, but I absolutely loved it. It was one of my top books of the year, and I would highly recommend it to you. After that, I decided I needed to read something a little bit less serious, and I picked up A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. T. Kingfisher is always a hit for me. I have loved every single one of her books that I have ever read, but I was not really sure about this one because I know it is one of her earlier books, and I know that it was written originally to be, I think, a middle grade story. Although I think, having read it, that it ends up somewhere in the YA area. It's a little bit too much. There's a little bit too much violence in it, I feel like, for it to fit as a middle grade book. I don't know. But anyway, I really enjoyed it. The whole way through, I thought it was a little bit more surface level and a little bit sillier than some of her other books, and I was kind of at about a 3.5 star, but then the ending took it up to a 4 star because the ending was fantastic. This is the story of a world where many people have magic, but that magic is often very small magic. Our main character has the ability to animate dough. She can make gingerbread men dance and do things for her, and that is the only magic that she has. So what's going to happen when she's called upon to do other things with that magic? It's just, I don't know. I don't want to spoil it for you. It's just a super cute and adorable story. If you're looking for something light, I would recommend it. It is not a Christmas or holiday themed mystery in spite of the gingerbread men on the cover. It is actually set, I think, in the spring. So if you're interested in it, and you know, it might make a good first T. Kingfisher book, I think, because it is so light and easy to read and pretty short. I just really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I picked up a short story, an illustrated short story that's absolutely beautiful called The Wood at Midwinter. It's by Susanna Clarke, who you may know from Piranesi or Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. This book is 64 pages long, and it is heavily illustrated, so you could literally read this in 35 minutes, I think, if you wanted to. It's a very literary story. It's set in the same world as Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And I don't know how to talk about it without spoiling part of it because it is so very, very short. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Because it's so short, it perhaps did not quite do as much as I would have liked for it to do, but I still thought that it was really lovely to see something new for her. And I loved the illustrations and just the whole idea of having an illustrated short story to read at wintertime. So I would recommend it. We have 3 more books that I read. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is I did do a reread, and the book I read was The Cautious Traveler's Guide to the Wastelands. I have read this previously. I gave it 4 stars when I read it before, and I stand by that 4-star rating. We actually listened to the audiobook. So we've had kind of a situation where I live where the bridge that I have to cross to get to work actually burned down. And so my commutes are taking an extremely long time. And we are actually carpooling so that we don't have to waste the gas on 2 long commutes. And we have decided, my partner Sean and I, to make the best of it and listen to audiobooks while we are in the car and have something to read together. And it's been really fun. This was the first one that we did. This was also the book that was the first book for the Not Reading for Content podcast by Danny Dabbles and Leandra the TBR0. And we like to watch both of their channels. So we decided that we would do the read along with their podcast. And that was really fun too, because they definitely brought up some things that I had not thought of when I read the book the first time. This is the story of a train that goes across Siberia, connecting St. Petersburg and Beijing. And it is basically not the only way to get between them, but the shortest way. But at some point, something has gone wrong in the Siberian wastelands, and nature has kind of taken a turn. And this train is heavily armored. There are bars on the windows, and it's just all very mysterious. We follow the child of the train, a child who was actually born on the train, who now works on the train, and lots of other characters. There's a mystery. There's just, so much stuff going on in this book. I was so impressed with this book as a debut novel. I would definitely buy anything that Sarah Brooks writes in the future. And also, I already own this book, but I have to tell you how much I love the cover. I just need you, if I can get it to focus, look at the little train going around the edges. It's just so pretty. I love it. Anyway, this is a reread. Still recommend it. Still 4 stars. Great book. Okay, so we have 2 books left, and they're going to be my worst and what I'm going to say is the best book of the month. I guess technically we probably would have to put James as my best book of the month just because it ended up on my top 10. But I want to talk about a different book because I've already talked about that book so much. So we're going to start out with my worst book of the month. And it was Orbital by Samantha Harvey. And yes, I know that this book just won the Booker Award, and that's fine. That's fine. I can absolutely see why it might appeal to a literary prize committee. But for me, I really did not like it and cannot recommend it. This is the story of a bunch of astronauts who are living on basically the International Space Station, although it's not named that. That's what it is. They're on the space station and they are orbiting the Earth, and we get to see all the things on the Earth that they see as they're on the space station. You know, we're passing over something, we're passing over something else. It's just the cycle of going through that as we orbit the Earth and we look down at the Earth. And I think the message is supposed to be something about how small our divisions are when we look at them from above. I think that's what it's supposed to be. But it was so boring. It's a 200-page book. It took me forever to read. Nothing happens, like nothing. This is a plotless book. Sometimes there'll be something that feels like it's going to be a little bit of a plot, and then it just kind of goes, and there's no plot. And I don't like that. And I do think this is a science fiction book, and I have seen the author kind of try to say that it's not, and I don't like that either, because one of the things that I'll get into a little bit with genre fiction is the way that we put genre fiction over in the genre fiction section and don't think that it deserves awards. And if something that is a genre fiction wins an award, it sometimes happens that nobody wants to call it that. But this is a science fiction book. It's just a boring science fiction book. And it's fine if you loved it. Like, I totally get it, but nothing happens. There are a lot of lists. Like, she likes to list things that are going on as she passes over things, or things that people are thinking about, or it's just real boring. And I cannot recommend it. And I think what made me really mad, actually, is that I know that it was on the shortlist for the Booker Prize with James, and it beat James. And there is no way that this book is better than James. Like, just no way at all that this should have beaten James. And I'm kind of salty about it a little bit, and I don't understand it, but that's okay. We're going to move on. But that is a non-recommendation for me. It was honestly one of my least favorite things that I read all year, and kind of sad that I read it after I had already done my worst books video, or it definitely would have been there. And finally, I'm going to give you my favorite book of the month. And I am excited, and I know a lot of people who watch this channel are also going to be excited, because my favorite book was Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. I know, what am I doing here? I gave Six of Crows, the first book in this duology, like a 3.5 star. I liked it, but I didn't feel the love that everyone else seems to feel for Six of Crows, so I was a little bit disappointed by it. This is the story of Kaz Brecker and his heist crew, kind of. It's definitely a criminal story. They're a found family. They are doing heists for various reasons. I'm not going to spoil any of the plot of this book because you're going to want to find it out for yourself. But mostly it's about the found family and the relationships between them and how they're going to commit these heists that they're doing. I was frustrated by the first book because I didn't feel like there was time for me to care about the characters. I didn't feel like I got enough backstory, and I didn't feel like the action stopped for long enough for me to really connect with them the way that I like to in a book. And Crooked Kingdom saw all those complaints and completely fixed them for me. I have not cried at a book the way that I cried at Crooked Kingdom in quite some time. No spoilers, but there's some stuff in this that made me so emotional. I cared about all the characters so much by the end. I loved that we were in their home city, so we were able to kind of see a little bit more of where they came from. I just really loved it. I think it actually, my favorite Leigh Bardugo book was Ninth House, and I think that this one has exceeded it. This was an easy 5-star, and it has brought the series up for me, I would say probably to about like a 4.5 star, maybe even a 5, if I consider the two books together. And I'm definitely thinking I'm going to need to purchase the special editions of these that came out. My copy is so sad. I'm going to just show you, like, I don't know if it'll focus on it. Like, I got this. This is a library copy. And I took the stickers off because I hate library stickers. And usually that's fine. But the cover, this is kind of like a really papery material that they use on the covers of these. And it did not survive my attempts all that well. So I'm definitely going to be picking those up at some point. But yes, I have to tell you that if you read Six of Crows and you were kind of like, well, that was fine, and you weren't sure, you need to just go ahead and read Crooked Kingdom, because this took it all the way for me. And it is my favorite book of December. And it was a big surprise. And I think that I love it when that happens. I think we all love it when that happens. When you find a book that you just were not expecting and it's just like the book, right? Yeah. All right, so that is it. That is everything that I read in the month of December. I had a pretty good reading month overall. I read a pretty decent amount of books in spite of everything that was going on. Some of them were real short, so don't let the number throw you off. It was not as many pages as I usually read, but I had a great time. Found some books that I would really, really highly recommend. Please leave me a comment and let me know the best book that you read in December, or let me know the worst book. I would like to know that too. I love hearing about how people don't like books. And with that, I will see you all in the next video. Hope you have a great day. Goodbye.